Namaskar. The government is putting all its forces together to promote films in the country. India produces more than 3,000 films a year, the largest film industry in the world, and the National Film Development Corporation will gain both in strength and will have greater purpose after the Films Division, the Directorate of Film Festivals, the National Film Archives and the Children's Film Society of India have all been merged with it. Now that's going to be in focus tonight, along with another major cabinet decision to benefit scheduled caste students. Also, precautionary measures being put in place to keep the new COVID strain from coming into India. All that's in focus tonight. My name is Mark Lin. Let's begin with the headlines here on Newsnight. A major decision to boost the education opportunities for scheduled caste students. The Union Cabinet approves 59,000 crore rupees post-matric scholarship scheme to benefit more than 4 crore students in the next 5 years. The Cabinet extends law protecting those living in unauthorized colonies of Delhi by another 3 years. The central government approves the merger of the film media units, Film Division, Directorate of Film Festivals, National Film Archives of India and Children's Film Society of India to merge with NFDC. The amendment is in the guidelines also to providing DTH services have been approved. Industry organizations welcome the government's decision. CII says that the commitment to minimum government, maximum governance is strong. FICCI says it will increase efficiency in the sector. The film industry welcomes the decision. BJP emerges as the largest party in Jammu and Kashmir's DDC elections, garnering more votes than National Conference, PDP and Congress. Ravi Shankar Prasad says that the people have endorsed Prime Minister's vision and delivered a resounding slap on the faces of separatists. Various farmers' organizations expressed their support for the farm reform laws. They meet the Agriculture Minister and hand over a letter of support signed by about 313,000 farmers. The Agriculture Minister reiterates the government's commitment to solving every problem faced by the farmers. The Defence Minister hopes that the farmers will withdraw their agitation soon. On the occasion of Farmers' Day, tribute paid to Chaudhry Charan Singh, former Prime Minister of the country. And on Good Governance Day, on the 25th of December, 18,000 crore rupees will be deposited in 9 crore farmers' accounts directly under the Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. War against corona continues. Declining trend in total active cases. Recovery rate rises to 95.69%. SOPs, night curfew in Karnataka and Maharashtra in view of the new variant of coronavirus in Britain. And concern spreads in countries around the world. So far, nearly 40 countries have imposed travel restrictions on arrivals from Britain. The German pharmaceutical company BioNTech is conducting tests on the effectiveness of the COVID-19 vaccine, results expected within the next 2 weeks. The Union Cabinet has approved the merger of 4 of its film media units, namely Films Division, Directorate of Film Festivals, National Film Archives of India and Children's Film Society India with the National Film Development Corporation. It's our top story. Reinforcing its commitment to reform and the minimum government, maximum governance, the Modi government has taken a mega transformative decision for the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. The Union Cabinet, chaired by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, approved the merger of 5 film media units by rationalizing infrastructure, manpower and other resources. The Memorandum of Articles of Association of NFDC have been expanded to include the 4 media units, Films Division, Directorate of Film Festivals, National Film Archives of India and Children's Film Society. NFDC will now do the work hitherto done by them separately as one unit.
सभी जो काम चल रहे हैं यानी जो फिल्म्स डिवीजन काम कर रही है जो चिल्ड्रन फिल्म सोसाइटी काम कर रही है, जो डायरेक्टर फिल्म फेस्टिवल काम कर रहा है, जो NFI काम कर रहा है, वो सारे काम चलते रहेंगे, वो नहीं बंद होंगे। संस्था जो अलग अलग थी उसके जगह एक संस्था होगी।
The merger of film units under one corporation will lead to uniformity in functions and better coordination. It will also ensure efficiency. Industry has welcomed the decision. CII tweeted, "The government's step to integrate its film sector media units into one single body is a reform in the right direction. It will not only bring synergy into the sector, but also facilitate the growth of the sunrise sector." Welcoming the cabinet decision, FICCI stated, "FICCI welcomes the government's move to integrate the film sector media units into one single body. This will bring efficiency, synergy and growth to the sector. It is a reform in the right direction." The film world also welcomed the verdict. Actor Anil Kapoor tweeted, "I welcome the government's decision to merge the film media units of the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. These units have been the champions of the Indian film industry. Their merger would bring efficiency and unleash new creative energies." Filmmaker Madhur Bhandharkar welcomed the government's decision. "This is a huge initiative taken by MIB to bring about synergy in the film sector. This enables India to harness its soft power potential within the country and globally. A huge initiative under the guidance of Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji and Honorable MIB Prakash Javadekar ji." Actor Kangana Ranaut too welcomed the government's decision. In a tweet, she said that convergence is the new normal in M&E sector. Narendra Modi government's decision to merge NFAI, DFF, Films Division, CFSI and NFDC is a historic step and infuse enthusiasm. Wonderful decision. We look forward to working with the umbrella organization. Film director Bonnie Kapoor also praised the decision, saying it is a welcome move for the entire entertainment world. The Producers Guild of India has also welcomed the centre's decision. Many organizations and artists all found the decision praiseworthy and a step in the right direction. The Union Cabinet has also approved the guidelines for direct-to-home services licenses in India.
आज के निर्णय से ये गाइडलाइन में बदलाव करके कॉमर्स मिनिस्ट्री जैसी ही गाइडलाइन अब यहाँ रहेगी, जो पहले बजट अनाउंसमेंट थे उसकी पूर्ति है, और इस क्षेत्र को भी 100% FDI में के लाया है।
The DTH sector has been brought on par with other sectors with 100% FDI. Though the Commerce Ministry had approved 100% foreign investment in the sector, the I&B Ministry rules needed to be changed for the purpose. The path for its implementation has been cleared. Licenses will be given for 20 years and renewed for 10 years. CII has also welcomed this decision. With Rishi Kumar, Newsnight Desk, DD India. So there are major cabinet decisions then for the I&B Ministry, and the major decision is rather about the convergence of the I&B Ministry entities. 4 entities have been merged with the National Film Development Corporation, and these entities are the Films Division of India, the Directorate of Films Festivals, and also the National Film Archives and the Children's Film Society of India. So what does this actually do to NFDC? These are the entities that have been merged. It leads to rationalization, minimum government, maximum governance. That's the maxim of the government. And we know that all film-related content will now come under one management. That's pretty easy to handle, easy to produce, easy to promote, easy to preserve films. Also, there'll be balanced, focused development on Indian cinema across genres, because you don't have to go to different agencies, all under the NFDC. Synergy in all activities, efficiency of use of infrastructure and manpower, and importantly, savings also on the exchequer, which is also significant. So there are also, besides this, there are some important guidelines for DTH, the new guidelines. The path has been cleared for 100% FDI in the DTH sector, direct-to-home sector. The licenses will be issued for 20 years. The license fee will be collected quarterly. The DTH infrastructure can actually now be shared, so the operators can share their DTH platform and transport stream of TV channels, and they can transfer that. And also the distributors can in fact share their subscriber management system, that's the SMS, And also, the distributors can share the conditional access system infrastructure will improve because of this sharing between the DTH operators. So these were the key decisions concerning the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. We're going to take a short break and then we'll come back and put this into focus. Do stay with us.
First television interview of the newly appointed FICCI president, Sri Uday Shankar. What's your roadmap when you represent FICCI?
A spirit of collaboration between the government and the industry to make sure that we all have the common goal and we are in partnership to do this and make sure that seamlessly.
You've said that every TV office spends disproportionate amounts of time discussing ratings. I say fix the inputs first.
Our obsession with TRPs in media, in television, is a bit like the obsession of a student who's looking at the results of the test all the time.
Self-regulation of media. Is it a myth? Could it be a reality, or is it just a perception-building exercise?
News environment in India, it still is very, very open. And I think people can say, by and large, there is a lot of freedom to speak and express their views. And to that extent, India remains one of the most open countries for news. Definitely one of the top 5.
So that brings us to In Focus tonight, and In Focus is this. Major initiative for the film sector reform, films expansion ahead. Let's take a look now at a major initiative for the film sector reform. And we have with us to discuss this Rahul Ravel, film director, and Bobby Bedi, member National Committee on Media Entertainment at CII. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being with us. Mr. Ravel, what do you say? I mean, the cinema has now got 5 horsepower in a sense. Does that, what does it actually mean for the film industry?
Well, I am very thrilled about this because I happen to be on the committee which looked into the rationalization and merger. We had been appointed by the Information Ministry. So there was Mr. Bimal Julka, who headed the committee. I was there myself. There was Mr. Nagar Barna, there was Mr. Shama Prasad, and Mr. A.K. And we spent a year over all these things, went through all in details with all the media units, and we came to realize that duplication of things were happening. It was not moving in the right direction.
Okay.
And we suggested a framework where everything comes under one umbrella, and so it gives more synergy to all the units. We can cut down on the staff because a whole hoard of money of the government of India was being spent without getting any results out of it.
Okay.
So we thought to rationalize the whole thing, and we submitted a report with a new umbrella to be formed, and it was submitted to the Honorable Minister, Mr. Prakash Javadekar, who in turn the Ministry of Information Broadcasting,
Right.
who vetted our report and submitted it to the PM and the cabinet.
Okay.
And it was wonderful that they accepted it. And for us, that was a great thing. And the ministry has been very helpful and helped us with this. And we're glad that somewhere the 5 of us have made a contribution
Sure.
towards this momentous decision. And I'm sure handled well, because now with NFDC going to be the umbrella body,
Okay.
and there's going to be a complete revamping of NFDC. Like Javadekar Sahab said, all the other bodies will carry on doing their work, but it will be more systemized now. There will be more synergy.
Right.
We'll all
Fair
be
enough.
shaking hands with each
Sure.
other. So, there will not be the same thing being duplicated.
Sure.
And there will be, I presume, a revamp of the way the working is. Even NNBC will go through revamp because now more responsibilities will come into everybody.
Okay.
So I'm glad, and
sure.
I'm really grateful to the PM and the cabinet and Mr. Javadekar and the secretary of the Information Ministry, Mr. Amit Khare, for all having helped us, in through this whole procedure.
Right. Mr. Bedi, so there's a lot of revamping that's taken place. It's showing the commitment of the government to reforms, and industry is supporting the government with regard to these reforms. What do you see? What's the outcome going to be like?
So it's very interesting. The name is the National Film Development Corporation of India.
Yes.
I think this is the first time, originally also there was a time when it was working with the film festival, but that was many, many years ago. But this is the first time that this unit is going to actually look into each one of those letters, National Film Development. And whether it's the Children's Film Society, whether it's the preservation of our archives, whether it's the documentary sector, all of it is going to be overseen through one lens, which is national film development. So I'm very hopeful. This is something that we've been wanting for a long time. And I think the first time that someone's going to have a chance. I think a lot of work needs to be done. You've been showing the slogan, minimum government, maximum governance.
Yes.
It is a space where you require the industry to participate very actively.
Yes.
It's really an activity of governments. But this is actually going to give India's film industry a chance to be globally competitive. So it's not just the rhetoric of 3,000 films. We are still less than 1% of the world's, film turnover. This will give us a real chance to be out there and prove our merit in the world. That's what we hope as an industry.
Right. But Mr. Ravel, if I have to just play devil's advocate here, we had, focused attention under these four different entities. Did that not actually work in that sense towards each of those goals that have now been expanded into the mandate of the National Film Development Corporation? Because when one looks at, things in theory, if one is given focused attention and a separate entity, then it's supposed to deliver much more.
Unfortunately, they were not delivering what they should have been delivering. I think that was the main focus and what we realized over the years. And even NFDC needed to be looked at again because, it was the National Film Development Corporation.
Yes.
It had to be worked in the right way. And that's why we suggested an umbrella to bring all these units into one. And like I said, the synergy will be much better.
Okay.
You'll have people in contact with each other. There'll be no duplication of work. It'll really make the whole thing expand. Of course, there will be a revamping done, I'm sure, within NFDC. Also, who's going to lead it? Who are people going to be working on it? Where the different divisions will go? I'm sure the government.
Well, there's a technical and a legal advisor who will advise the government on those more matters.
I'm sure the Army Ministry, which is run by very capable people, extremely capable, I'm doing a lot of work with them, will really work towards the best. And what I really liked was that finally we had a government which looked at the film industry and is now looking at them further. And they initiated the whole thing. The whole thing was initiated by the PM's office into the Army Ministry, and it went on from there. And again, for me, the proud moment is being part of this history. This is a historical moment for films.
Okay.
And being part of the 5 people who were on the committee. So it gives me great pleasure, and I really hope that everything will go well, and I'm sure it will.
Indeed.
This one.
Well, Mr. Bedi, the avenues for films have vastly increased. I mean, there's the internet now where a lot of movies are played on before they go into, and we've lived in this world where COVID has, brought us all to look at our phones, and that's where we are watching movies these days. So how would you look at the film world moving forward, and the fact that industry is going to see many more opportunities here, and the role that the government is playing under under the maxim of government maximum governance in this context?
So the government is an enabler.
Yes.
What they've done is they've said, okay, guys, instead of firing in 4 different directions, let's all fire in the same direction.
Right.
And it's under the auspices of the National Film Development Corporation. And Rahul is right. I mean, these guys have been sort of doing their jobs only in the past, and the National Film Development Corporation has been focusing on many things other than national film development. But if it retains its focus and if it channelizes the energies of CFSI, the Documentary Association, as well as the archives, you'll find that, you know, if we do it right, there's a good chance. And I think that is really the opportunity. And I don't think it's a space that is going to come our way again. So we've got to work at getting it right. I mean, that's the main thing. It's a great idea to enact it. It's a great idea to pursue this.
Sure.
As an industry, we have to back it up and do it in a way that whether it's on the internet, whether it's at international film festivals, wherever we get a chance, children's festivals, anything, because it's got to start from there.
Indeed.
And we find that we will finally achieve it. If we are lucky, we will get there.
Fine. A final word from you, Mr. Ravel. The fact is that we are the largest film industry in the world. We produce 3,000 films a year. Are we likely to see much more being produced? Are we likely to? Yeah. What do you say?
We are definitely likely to see better quality.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Yeah.
You know, compared to the international standards today, we've got very good minds, creative minds working in India. And one thing I want to add in this merger of these five things, we did find in various capacities, there were very, very capable people also working, and we had recommended that they should stay on.
Yes.
Now, the decision finally will be taken by the ministry, but there were people in all the departments who were very, very good, but there were also people who were not paying as much attention as they should have been paying to it. So, but in the end, ended up well, and I'm sure the quality of films will increase in a big way.
Yes.
Especially now that we've got 5 serious media units backing us as one.
May I just make a quick comment here?
Yeah, very quickly, because we run short of time, Mr. Bedi. Quickly, yes.
You know, NFDC ran very successfully a film bazaar program that actually enabled high quality cinema to come out of India and impress the world. They did it with a very limited resource. I'm just hoping that now with that mindset and this resource, we will be able to multiply the difference.
We leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Rahul Ravel and Bobby Bedi, for joining us here and helping us understand what this merger is going to mean. We're going to have better films, perhaps, more films, and also improve India's soft power and capacity. Moving on then to our next story, major and transformatory changes have been approved by the Centre in the centrally sponsored scheme, Post-Matric Scholarship to students belonging to the scheduled castes. The scheme allows students to pursue any post-matric course starting from class 11, with the government meeting the cost of education. And the central government is committed to give a big push and further impetus to this effort so that the higher education of scheduled caste students would reach up to the national standards within a 5-year period.
The Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs approved major and transformatory changes in the centrally sponsored scheme, Post-Matric Scholarship to students belonging to scheduled castes, to benefit more than 4 crore SC students in the next 5 years. The Cabinet has approved a total investment of Rs 59,048 crores, of which central government would spend 60% and the balance would be spent by the state governments.
ये डीबीटी पद्धति से छात्रों के सीधे अकाउंट में जाएगी। राज्य सरकार से हम छात्रों की सूची मंगाएंगे, उनकी सूची और अकाउंट नंबर आने के बाद हम राज्यों से कहेंगे कि वो 40% धनराशि उनके अकाउंट में डालें, और जैसे ही वो धनराशि डालेंगे केंद्र सरकार तुरंत उसमें इस प्रकार की जो राशि बनती है केंद्र से वो उनके अकाउंट में डालेंगे।
The Post-Matric Scholarship Scheme for Scheduled Castes allows students to pursue any post-matric course starting from class 11th and onwards, with the government meeting the cost of education. In another decision, the cabinet has extended the legal protection given to unauthorized colonies in Delhi for a further period of 3 years.
नेशनल कैपिटल टेरिटरी ऑफ दिल्ली लॉ ये 2014 में समाप्त हुआ। हमने 2014 में उसको 3 साल के लिए आगे बढ़ाया, यानी ज़्यादा मुदत दी 3 साल, फिर उसके बाद फिर से एक बार 2020 तक दी। अब चूंकि शीतकालीन सत्र नहीं हो रहा है तो उसके लिए और 3 साल देने का अध्यादेश को आज मंजूरी दी है।
Cabinet also gave its approval for signing the revised air services agreement between India and Afghanistan and between India and Philippines. Revised air services agreements signify an important landmark in the civil aviation relations between India and two countries. With Rishi Kumar, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
And to help us understand this, we are joined by Ashok Tandon, senior journalist, throwing light on this subject. Mr. Tandon, thanks very much for being with us. The question that comes to mind is the government's policy of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, and how it is linked actually with providing equal opportunity also, which is, enshrined in the Constitution. This is perhaps the easiest way of doing it, the best way of doing it, and it should have been done a long time ago in terms of, providing better educational opportunities for scheduled castes.
Certainly, actually it is Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas and Sabka Vishwas.
Absolutely, yes.
To give confidence to the deprived sections of the society, particularly the youth among the deprived section of the society, that the government cares for them, and particularly for their education, higher education, because we know in India there's a huge dropout at the school level, particularly after the 10th class.
Yes.
So to give a push to this particular section of the society, that they do need to go for higher education, and therefore a scheme of scholarship. And this is such a massive push. It will certainly, normally the estimates are that 1.36 crore youth from the SC category, they get dropped out at the 10th class. Now they will get a scholarship, and therefore they can pursue their education beyond 11th and also for the graduation courses. So in this regard, I think this is yet another major scheme which has been launched for the welfare and emancipation of this particular class. And the best part is that it will be totally transparent. It will be on an online portal, and total accountability, transparency, and then there will be constant monitoring. Monitoring system will be strengthened. There will be audit, and even from each institution, there will be audit reports based on all these direct bank transfer. And also states have been made a party to it. The states also, they will be verifying the caste and other credential of the student. They will be contributing 40% towards this scholarship. And once the 40% scholarship is, credit to the student's bank account, obviously then the 60% will come from the central pool. And this is, I think, one of the major push towards the education for the downtrodden, particularly the scheduled caste category students. And this is going to benefit a large, because in the next 5 years, we know how many students are going to benefit. So I think this has to be appreciated by all sections of the society.
Indeed. And also when we look at, you did mention about the efficiency with which it's going to be implemented. That also adds to Vishwas, Sabka Vishwas. And we look at the goal at the end of the day, which is when we see so many people moving into a higher form of education, the society itself gets enlightened, and the quality of output from society, I mean, we're already doing reasonably well, but it can, by an order of magnitude increase significantly. And, the emergence of India as a world power it really would have a greater significance.
No, generally the perception is that the government schemes, they don't work because the money will not reach the needy and the person who is actually the beneficiary.
Yes.
Now, because of the online portal mechanism, there will be total transparency, and then there will be accountability also. So there will be no middleman, and the money reaches directly to the student's account, and also with the sharp eye of the state government. So I think the accountability, the social audit, all these things were not there earlier. That is why people didn't have, confidence in the government schemes, because the money would never reach them. So this is, I think, a major reform which this government has done. That whether it is for the student scholarship, whether it is for the women, whether it is for the forward, all these schemes, the money is going directly into their bank account, and there are no middlemen. Because earlier the money would be, siphoned by a large number of middlemen, and the poor would not get anything. So in that context, I think it will instill a sense of confidence among the youth from the SC community that the government do cares for them, and therefore this scholarship scheme is going to be a big hit.
Indeed. So this provides an enabling environment definitely for students of the scheduled castes to pursue their education right up to the top. But we also need to look at the infrastructure of schools and the infrastructure for higher education. Would you say that that has been improved to a great extent? Because a lot of people also drop out because of the fact that they don't have teachers in classes. They don't find that there's that kind of intention from the education system to take them forward.
See, education is in a concurrent list. The policies, programs are made by the central government, but the implementing authorities are the state government. So therefore, to provide infrastructure, adequate infrastructure in school, primary school, and even secondary schools, this is the responsibility of the states, and in certain cases of the municipal corporation and municipalities also. So therefore, now it will be a combined effort, the part of the state government as well as the central government. The center will give money, 60% of the amount which the approved today is something like 59,000 crore. So that much center can do, and also ensure that the money reaches the right quarters and the right hands. Then it is up to the state government to earmark budget for the infrastructure. So I agree with you that for the education, primary and also higher education, infrastructure has to come with the central assistance, but states have to ensure that all the infrastructure is in place.
Absolutely. We leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Ashok Tandon, for joining us here on Newsnight. Moving on then to our next story. The world, which has heaved a sigh of relief following the encouraging results from various vaccine candidates, has now been thrown back into turmoil because of the discovery of a new mutant variant of the coronavirus, which is spreading much faster and more quickly. And the source nation is the United Kingdom, and it has been virtually isolated in the world, with nations announcing travel bans and restrictions to Britain. With streets empty and border posts teeming with waiting trucks, Britain is on the verge of a major fight against the pandemic and its induced effects.
The new variant of coronavirus has triggered reactions from major economies of the world, as nearly 40 nations have now imposed ban on incoming flights and freight trucks from the UK. Many nations in the EU have imposed restrictions on freight movement from the UK, virtually isolating the nation from the rest of the world. Korea and Japan have also announced similar restrictions. The US government is considering requiring that all passengers travelling from the United Kingdom receive negative COVID-19 test within 72 hours of departure as a condition of entry. The figures are also staggering, creating further fear among the nations. Another 36,804 people in the UK have tested positive for COVID-19 within 24 hours, highest daily increase of coronavirus cases in the UK so far. There are grave concerns over the fast spread of a new coronavirus strain in Britain, which is said to be about 70% more transmissible than the previous strains. Thousands of cases of the more infectious variant of coronavirus have been detected across Britain, indicating that the new strain had spread beyond areas under the toughest Tier 4 restrictions. Anxious shoppers have cleared the shelves at supermarkets across London after announcement of additional lockdowns and restrictions. However, around 62% of food supplies sold in the UK are imported from European countries. The logistics chain disruption has triggered panic buying among horrified residents, though local authorities assured consumers repeatedly to shop rationally. With queues of trucks snaking to the horizon in England, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson scrambled to get French President Emmanuel Macron to lift ban on freight from Britain. Late on Tuesday, a deal was reached with Paris to allow French and other EU residents to return home, provided they have a negative COVID test that is less than 72 years old.
Yeah, we've made good progress today with the French government, and what we've agreed is that the border can open with tests for everybody leaving the country. That means that you must have had a test within the last 3 days, and of course it's got to be a test which is certified as well. It's going to enable French citizens primarily to return.
Meanwhile, BioNTech is testing effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccine it developed with Pfizer against the infectious new strain of the virus, as it prepares to send some 12.5 million doses to EU countries by the end of the year. The company is testing whether the vaccine is effective against the variant strain and expects results in the next couple of weeks.
We are confident that this will be the case, since in the past we have tested more than 20 virus variants with different type of mutations, and the result was always that the vaccine induces an immune response which is so broad that it attacks multiple positions in this virus protein. And you have just to calculate that 99% of this virus protein is not changed. Only 1% is, or less than 1% is changed. So the likelihood is high that the vaccine can deal with that. But we have to do the experiment.
The European Union is gearing up for vaccination campaign of unprecedented scale following regulatory approval for the shot on Monday. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, the new variant of SARS-CoV-2 virus has triggered a response code in India as well, with the Health Ministry issuing a detailed SOP for the epidemiological surveillance and response. The SOP envisages detailed check, testing and tracing of people who have arrived from the UK in the recent past and their contacts in India.
A new variant of SARS-CoV-2 virus is defined by a set of 17 changes or mutations, and it may result in the virus becoming more infectious and spreading more easily between people. The flights from UK are suspended temporarily from the 23rd of December to the 31st of the month or till further orders. The Ministry of Health has issued SOPs for epidemiological surveillance and response for the same. The main pointers for the SOP are it applies to all passengers travelling from or transiting through airports in the UK and disembarking in India during the intervening period from the 21st to 23rd of December 2020. All such passengers would be subjected to RT-PCR test on arrival. In case of a positive sample, it is recommended that spike gene-based RT-PCR test should also be performed. Passengers testing positive will be isolated in an institutional isolation facility in a separate unit. Samples will be sent to National Institute of Virology, Pune, or any other appropriate lab for genomic sequencing. If the genomic sequencing indicates presence of new variant of SARS-CoV-2, then the patient will be kept in a separate isolation unit. Those who are found negative on testing with RT-PCR at the airport would be advised to quarantine at home. Prior to check-in, the traveller will be explained about this SOP. In-flight announcements must also be made. Travellers from the UK who arrived in India since the last 1 month will be contacted by district surveillance officers and monitored in community. Authorities concerned will ensure that all contacts of those travellers in the last 4 weeks will be traced and monitored. They will also be tested according to the protocol, and contacts of positive cases would be subjected to institutional quarantine in separate quarantine centres. Meanwhile, the ongoing trend of contraction of India's total active cases is on. The active case load of the country stands at 2,89,240. The daily recoveries exceeding the daily new cases have ensured a total net reduction of the active case load. While 23,950 persons were found positive in the past 24 hours, India has registered 26,895 new recoveries during the same period. Total recoveries now stand at 96,63,382. The recovery rate has also increased to 95.69%. The share of active cases in the total positive cases has further shrunk to 2.86%. Maharashtra and Karnataka have imposed night curfew as a precautionary measure while the nation continues to fight the COVID-19 pandemic. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
And that brings us to In Focus number 2. And In Focus is this: tracking and tracing the COVID mutant. Tracking and tracing the COVID mutant. And joining us to discuss this is Professor Randeep Guleria, the Director of the All Institute of Medical Sciences. Thank you very much, Dr. Guleria. So, I mean, are we back at square one in a sense? Because what we are doing is we are tracking and tracing something new. Or, you know, or are our testing systems already in place to identify this, this variant?
Tracking something which is a variant, and we have a lot of systems in place, and we are in a much better position than what we were a few months ago. The challenge for us is that we are currently doing very well, and we have downward trend as far as our cases are concerned. We have a very good recovery rate, and we have to maintain that. And we don't want that we get a new variant which suddenly causes an increase in the number of cases. And that is why testing, tracking and tracing becomes more important to pick up this variant and isolate it based on the SOPs so that we don't have a spike of cases. Currently, the good thing is that if you look at the epidemiological data, the data which is emerging for the last 14 days from the country, there is no area where we can say there is a spike in cases where this variant may have come and caused a sudden increase in the number of cases, as we've seen in southeast of England, which is what led them to really pick up this variant.
But if this variant, you know, has formed naturally on its own, one would presume that these mutations will take place in India as well, amongst the variants that are in existence here, because I mean reports suggest that the virus is mutating at the rate of about 2 times a month. So we probably have some variants here already.
Correct. So we already have, if you look at data from National Institute of Virology, Pune, it does show that there has been some degree of mutations in the strain which is also circulating in India, and that has been seen globally also. And if we look at the reports over the last few months, a lot of mutations have been reported in the literature, but by and large, these mutations have not really caused a major change in what we are interested in, and that is, has the virus become more virulent? Is it causing more deaths? Is it causing more mortality or more hospital admissions? Or has the virus increased its infectiousness, that is, it's spreading more rapidly?
Yes.
And some people will also say, is the virus now causing a milder disease as compared to before? Because as the virus wants to propagate itself, it will actually propagate itself by causing a milder disease. If it caused a very severe disease and everyone who got the virus went into hospital and died, the virus would not be able to propagate itself.
Yes.
So I think what we have currently noticed is that the mutation that has happened has not led to a more severe disease. It has not led to increased hospitalization or mortality, even in southeast England, where large number of such cases with this variant have been found. But it has led to more cases happening there. So it is more infectious, it spreads much more. When we talk of the R0, that is how many cases one person can infect. If we have an R0 of 2, that means one person will infect 2 cases. The R0 in this with this variant has gone up by with the normal one by 0.4, and that is why, based on modeling, they've said that this is 70% more infectious. So therefore, this is a strain which can spread more rapidly. But we are not seeing that in our country. But we need to be very, very vigilant.
So it's learning to coexist then with humanity. But you know, the concern also is that if the spike protein is changing, then it could in fact impact the vaccine. But the results say that, you know, it's not affecting the spike protein too much, not even 1%. But you know, I mean, if the mutations take place like this, is that likely to happen over time?
So this has always been a cause of concern, that if the vaccines are actually targeted against the antigen which is taken from the spike protein, and if that protein changes dramatically, then the vaccine efficacy would change. And we've seen that not for COVID-19, because the mutation here is very slow and not as fast as for other respiratory viruses like influenza. The influenza virus, which is H1N1, also we had a pandemic of swine flu, mutates more rapidly, and that is why the vaccine has to be made, a new vaccine has to be made every year, and it's an annual vaccine. coronaviruses don't mutate or don't have that antigenic drift that frequently, and therefore it's unlikely that this will happen very quickly. But theoretically, there is always a chance that the virus may mutate and the efficacy of the vaccine may come down. But all researchers and vaccine manufacturers are vigilant about this. They are aware of this, and they can tweak the vaccine to make it of that nature that it can cover for any variation which may happen.
So we are not likely to see a new COVID year next year?
I don't think so, but what I would like to say is that even if we have a mutant which is more infectious, what it really means is that COVID appropriate behavior becomes even more important.
Yes.
No matter how, what be the variant, if we wear our masks regularly, if we have a physical distancing, if we are able to do regular hand washing, if we avoid going to crowded areas, we will be able to protect ourselves even from this new variant of COVID-19. And when we have the vaccine, which is just around the corner, it becomes all the more important, because if you are able to really get through these few weeks and then vaccination gets rolled out, then we will have an extra protection, and we should be able to see a decline in the number of cases and the number of deaths in our country.
Professor Randeep Guleria, thank you very much for joining us here on Newsnight and clearing several of our doubts, as always. Now, moving on to our next story. Various farmers' organizations have expressed their support for the farm reform laws, and they've met the Agriculture Minister. They've handed over a letter of support which has been signed by over 3 lakh farmers, 313,000 farmers in fact, and the Agriculture Minister has reiterated the government's commitment to solving every single problem that the farmers have faced. Also, National Farmers' Day was observed across the country today, 23rd of December. It marks the birth anniversary of the former Prime Minister, Chaudhry Charan Singh, and the Defence Minister said that he hopes that the farmers will withdraw their agitation soon.
The agitation of the farmers who are protesting for their demands on different borders of the capital Delhi continues. At the same time, many farmer organizations have also come out in support of the new agricultural laws. A delegation of farmers in favor of the new farm reform laws met the Agriculture Minister on Wednesday. Under the banner of CNRI, they handed over the letters of support signed by more than 3 lakh farmers. After meeting the farmers, the Agriculture Minister said that these laws have been drafted after several rounds of discussion, and the farmers and various organizations across the country are supporting it.
सभी विद्वानों के मतानुसार भी ये कृषि सुधार कानून लाए गए हैं। आज देश में देश का अधिकांश भाग कानूनों का समर्थन कर रहा है। मैं पूरी तरह आशावान हूं कि हमारे किसान यूनियंस चर्चा करेंगे। भारत सरकार पूरी तरह वार्ता के लिए उनके साथ तैयार है, और मुझे पूरी आशा है कि जल्दी ही वो विचार करके, निर्णय करके हम तक इसकी सूचना देंगे, और हम तत्परता से उनसे वार्ता करेंगे, और मुझे आशा है कि हम लोग समाधान की ओर अग्रसर होंगे।
In the meeting with the Agriculture Minister, the farmers said that the farmers' law is in interest of agriculture. The farmers said that the new laws are in the interest of agriculture and should not be withdrawn.
पूरा एक बार इसको सभी को समझना चाहिए, पढ़ना चाहिए, और उसमें जहाँ तक हमारी संभावना है वो लाभ की है संभावना। किसानों के लिए लाभ का है कानून।
नहीं, हमें लगता है कि जो अभी कानून बन रहा है उसमें फायदा ज़्यादा होगा, और मंडियाँ तो बंद नहीं होने वाली है।
सरकार जो कह रही है वो सही है, मंडियों में सुधार होना चाहिए।
National Farmers' Day was celebrated on Wednesday to mark the birth anniversary of Chaudhry Charan Singh, the 5th Prime Minister of India. Prime Minister Narendra Modi remembered former Prime Minister on his birth anniversary. He tweeted and said, "Humble tributes to the former Prime Minister Chaudhry Charan Singh Ji on his birth anniversary. He remained devoted to the development of villages and farmers throughout his life, for which he will always be remembered." Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh also said in a tweet, Chaudhry Charan Singh wanted that the income of farmers of the country should increase, their crops should get remunerative prices, and the honor of farmers should be protected. With this as inspiration, many steps are being taken in the interest of farmers under the leadership of our Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Some farmers are agitated about the agricultural laws. The government is talking to them with full sensitivity. I hope that they will withdraw their movement soon. UP CM Yogi Adityanath garlanded the statue of former Prime Minister on the occasion of Farmers' Day, paying tributes to him. Meanwhile, on the occasion of the Good Governance Day on 25th December, 9 crore farmers will be given 18,000 crore directly in their account under the Prime Minister Kisan Samman Nidhi. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be the chief guest at this event and will interact with farmers.
9 करोड़ किसानों को 18,000 करोड़ रुपया एक बटन दबाकर 2 घंटे के भीतर 9 करोड़ किसानों को उनके अकाउंट में ट्रांसफर किया जाएगा। इस कार्यक्रम में मुख्य अतिथि के रूप में माननीय प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी जी रहेंगे।
In midst of all this, demonstrations by farmers continued on the borders of Delhi. Farmers are adamant on their demand to repeal all 3 laws. The people of Noida and Ghaziabad are facing a lot of difficulties due to this agitation. With inputs from Ajay Vikram Singh in Delhi and Lucknow Bureau, Newsnight Desk, DD India.
Well, the BJP emerged as the largest party in Jammu and Kashmir's District Development Council election, garnering more votes than the National Conference, the PDP and the Congress. And Ravi Shankar Prasad, the Union Minister, said that the people have endorsed the Prime Minister's vision and they've delivered a resounding slap on the face of terrorists as well as separatists.
Results of recently concluded District Development Council elections in Jammu and Kashmir reflect people's hope and their readiness to embrace the journey of development in Union territory. It is a new dawn for the people of Jammu and Kashmir, as elections has negated the design of separatists and terrorists and reaffirmed people's faith in democracy.
घाटी में कमल अपने वजूद पर खिला है। बीजेपी पूरे स्टेट में सबसे बड़ी पार्टी बनकर आई है। बीजेपी के 4,87,364, इसकी तुलना में आप एनसी के 2,82,000, पीडीपी के 55,000 और कांग्रेस के 1,39,000 को जोड़ दें तो बीजेपी का वोट इन तीनों से ज्यादा है।
जम्मू कश्मीर में नया नाम गुपकार गैंग के रूप में दिया गया। बहुत सारे दल इसमें इकट्ठे हुए, लेकिन ये सब इकट्ठे होकर भी भारतीय जनता पार्टी और नरेंद्र मोदी जी को चुनौती नहीं दे पाए। इन चुनावों में भी जो आंकड़े मैं आप सबके सामने रखने जा रहा हूं वो बहुत महत्वपूर्ण है। भारतीय जनता पार्टी को इन चुनावों में 75 सीटें मिली, जो सबसे ज्यादा है।
7 Kashmir-centric mainstream political parties, including the National Conference and the People's Democratic Party, contested the polls in an alliance under the banner of the People's Alliance Gupkar Declaration. BJP has emerged as the single largest political party in DDC polls. As per the results, BJP has won 75 seats, National Conference 67, Independent candidates 50, PDP 27, Congress 26 and Apni Party 12 seats. Thanking voters of J&K for voting BJP as single largest party, Home Minister Amar Shah said that BJP will continue to work relentlessly towards the prosperity and development of the J&K region. In a tweet, he said, "I heartily thank our sisters and brothers of J&K for voting BJP as the single largest party in the District Development Council elections. BJP under the leadership of PM Narendra Modi ji will continue to work relentlessly towards the prosperity and development of the J&K region." On the other hand, the National Conference leader Omar Abdullah said that he had expected a better result for the alliance. It was the first election after Jammu and Kashmir's special status under Article 370 was revoked last year. The polling took place in 8 phases, starting November 28th and concluding on December 19th. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
An adventurous and wonderful river rafting expedition named as the Brahmaputra Amantran Abhiyan on mighty Brahmaputra was flagged off by the Sports Minister Kiren Rijiju. The flag-off ceremony was witnessed by Arunachal Pradesh's Health and Family Minister Alo Libang and the Chairman of the Brahmaputra Board Rajiv Yadav, the DIG Manoj Kumar Yadav, Commandant Rajesh Thakur, officials of the district administration and local public. Abhiyan was started from the Indo-China border in Jelling and will terminate on the 21st of January at the district of Assam, and which is near the Indo-Bangladesh border. This long and challenging but beautiful journey of around 917 kilometers will be covered in almost 1 month along the Siang River in Arunachal Pradesh and along the Brahmaputra River in Assam. On Wednesday, the Army Chief General Naravane visited various high-altitude forward areas in eastern Ladakh. He reviewed the overall military preparedness.
On Wednesday, Army Chief General M.M. Naravane visited various high-altitude forward areas in eastern Ladakh and reviewed India's overall military preparedness. A public interest litigation has been filed in Supreme Court seeking conduct of free and fair elections in West Bengal. The plea seeks issuance of directions to the Election Commission of India to submit a detailed report regarding bogus voters in West Bengal and also to direct the EC to take appropriate action in removal of bogus voters from the voters list. A special CBI court in Thiruvananthapuram on Wednesday sentenced a priest and a nun to life imprisonment for the murder of Sister Abhaya in Kottayam in 1992. Maharashtra State Human Rights Commission has summoned the Brihanmumbai Municipal Commissioner in connection with a complaint received regarding demolition of property belonging to actress Kangana Ranaut.
And with that, we conclude News Night for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. But as we go, we always remind you that we're still living in COVID times, and it's always right and correct to maintain all these COVID protocols. So mask up and always keep yourself safe. It's a simple task, just wear a mask. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.
Namaskar, hello and welcome to our special show, The Cinematic Journey. In coming weeks, we are going to narrate a story of light, camera and action. Yes, we will talk about the birth of cinema, its first steps, its youth and its golden period. We will try to rewind, pause and play this glorious journey of Indian cinema. So what are we waiting for? Let's start. 1960 to 70. The golden age of Hindi cinema is cherished even today, and Bollywood lovers are going to remain fond of this time for years to come. It is a common notion that Bollywood's golden era was during the 50s, but the fact is that the actual period had a span of almost across 2 decades. It started during the late 1940s, around the same time as India's independence, and peaked around the late 1950s, eventually coming to an end in the late 1960s.
एहसान तेरा